Hey everyone, this is Sean Smith, and first of all I want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I just want to take a few moments and share with you a story and three of the most powerful life lessons I ever learned that really got me on the road to becoming a full-time messenger and being a coach and trainer and just trying to get my message out to the planet. And it happened when I was 13 years old. I was riding my bike to school. I was high on life. I had just come back from the Little League World Series and I was a little celebrity in my hometown. And as I just was riding along without a care in the world, there was a car coming on the right-hand side of me and she ran a stop sign. And she was about to hit me, so to avoid being hit by her, I swerved to the left right into traffic. And before I could even turn my head around to see what was going to happen, my next door neighbor just plowed right through me doing about 50 miles an hour. And I flipped over the car and blacked out somewhere up in the air. And when I came to, I was in the street and I was looking at oncoming traffic. I mean, the cars were getting bigger and bigger. And I had one thought, which was move, right? But as I got up to try to run, my leg collapsed because the bumper had almost severed my left leg at the shin on impact. And it was in that moment, as I turned my head and saw all the cars continuing to come after me, that I realized one of the most powerful lessons, which is in life, you don't get what you wish for. You get what you will for. I think too often we spend our energy wishing for things to happen to us or wishing for things to be different. And it's about mustering up all the courage and bravery and inner resources that you have and will for those things to happen. You've got to put your will and intention and attention on all of your goals and your dreams. And so I really don't know how I got out of the street that day. My next memory was being on the side of the road with a bunch of people surrounding me and praying for me. But somehow I willed my way out. And over the course of the next 2 years, I learned the power of perseverance, which is the second lesson. They did experimental surgery on me, and I was a baseball player at the time with huge dreams of playing professional ball. And they were all derailed by this car accident as I had to rehab and learn how to walk again and eventually learn how to run again. But what I realized and learned through that experience was that if your dreams are bigger than your doubts, and if your love for whatever it is that you're searching for and willing for outweighs the struggle, then you can do whatever you want. My love for getting back on the baseball field and my determination was much bigger than rehabilitation. It was much bigger than all of the internal stuff that I was going through, the external challenges. And so check in sometimes and just see, what is it that you're really after on this planet, and which weighs more, your dreams or your doubts, right? Which weighs more, your love for life and whatever it is you want to accomplish, or the reasons to quit. And whichever one weighs more is going to win out. And so I persevered and got back on the baseball field and ended up going to 2 more World Series and ending my career actually in the national championship game. But going back to the whole experience, the third lesson I learned was probably the most powerful. Because as a 13-year-old that day, I was a lot like many 13-year-olds, I'm sure. I was immortal in my own mind. And what I realized during that accident and looking back on the accident, because according to all the details, I should have died that day. There's no way, I should be hit by a car doing 50 miles an hour without putting on the brakes and survive. So according to all the details, I should have died. But instead of receiving an early death, I got this precious gift. And the most precious gift that I got was perspective. Seeing life through a mortal set of lenses. Because I realized that no matter where we are in life, it can all end in a moment's notice and without warning. And so I made a choice to myself that day that I would never take life for granted. If we only have one shot on this planet to leave a mark, and if there's a choice between, living this life of excellence and settling for pain and mediocrity and regret, I just never wanted to look back on my life with any of that regret. So I made a choice that I was willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to live a life of excellence, to leave a positive mark on this planet, to make a difference, so that when I look back on my life, I can look back with joy. I can look back with pride and happiness. And so I made a lot of choices that weren't easy. You know, I started hanging around different people. I started seeing opportunities differently. I started looking at my parents differently. I just started to pay attention to the people that had what I wanted. And I started looking at the recipes that they were following. And I also started to pay maybe even more attention to the people that had what I didn't want. Regret, pain, restriction, poverty. You know, what are the recipes that they're following? I wanted to make sure that I didn't follow their recipes because I didn't like what was coming out of the oven, right? But even though I made that promise to myself, and I'm sure that pretty much every single one of you that's still watching this video has made a similar promise to yourself, or you wouldn't even be attracted to this page, you wouldn't be attracted to this, you know, to this site, to my video in particular. But what I realized that even though I had made that promise to myself, in a moment, over the next 20 years, you know, that sacred promise wasn't enough to outweigh all of my internal struggles, to outweigh all of my limiting beliefs about myself, the doubts that kept creeping in saying, you know, what if I'm not enough? What if I fail? What will they think, right? What will I think? And so for the next 20 years of my life, I kept beating my head up against the wall and creating a lot of frustration because I knew that I had the desire, I knew I had the work ethic, I thought that I had the resources, but for whatever reason, I still wasn't creating what I wanted to in life. And then about 7 years ago, I was in a personal development seminar, and I was introduced to this concept of limiting beliefs. And it was at that moment, you know, I was 33 years old, it was at that moment that I realized that I had a story, this unconscious story that was holding me captive my whole life. And the story was, I'm not good enough. And as soon as I realized that this was the anchor that was keeping my boat, you know, chained inside the harbor, I was given the tools to release the anchor. I was given the tools to change the story. And so for the last 7 years of my life, I've really been focused on what creates those stories, from our childhood experiences to early adulthood to the programming that we get from all of society in general, to what we see on TV, to all the institutions that we're a part of, churches, schools, sports. And what is it that creates this sabotage inside the most powerful, you know, asset that we have on the planet, which is the human mind? What is it that creates this sabotage? And how can a human being know what to do but still not do it? So that's really what I've dedicated my journey to, is to help people just go through the same experiences that I went through, which is to gain awareness on what it is that's actually holding us back. And it's not the lack of knowledge. What is that's actually holding us back, that's creating those fears, so that we can uproot the anchor, so that we can change the story, so that we can open doors to new possibilities in our life, and so that the rest of our book sounds the way we want it to sound, instead of being chained to the previous chapters. So my final question for you is, what are you more committed to? The previous chapters of your life or the future ones? And whichever answer you give, act accordingly.